Right, well, welcome to Howard's Orchids here in Cambridge, where we're still in the middle of winter. This is a video that I've been meaning to do for a long time, and it's about jewel orchids. Let's just open this small terrariums I've got. First of all, I'll show you the temperature record. So I put this maximum minimum thermometer stroke humidity meter in here yesterday just to check, and this shows that the current humidity is 93%. It's been down as low as 88 and up as high as 99. The temperature currently is 16 centigrade. It's been down to 13 and up as high as 17, which in Fahrenheit is 56 to 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I wasn't sure about what the temperature and humidity was doing in here, so this is why I thought it would be useful to check. And this is my pot of jewel orchids. I've got 3 different species in here, and they are now doing quite well, but when I first got them, I did quite a lot of reading and research to find out what conditions they needed, and in the wild they grow sort of on the forest floor of mostly tropical forests. They have a sort of rhizome that creeps along the ground, and they need to be kept warm and moist and shady, although opinions seem to differ about the amount of light that they needed. And so initially I potted them up into my normal orchid mix in a basket and put them down where I thought they would do well, and they didn't do well at all. They grew, but they certainly didn't thrive. So I'm now going to take you back to 9 months ago to show you what they looked like and what I did as a result of me keeping them alive but them really not thriving. But now they're doing really quite well. I'll just pop them back in there for now. In this first shot you can see the plastic basket that I put them in with a mixture of orchid bark and some chopped sphagnum moss, and then put it in a plastic dish to maintain a bit more moisture just at the base. In this next shot you can see where I tipped them out of the pot to see what there was left. On the Anoectochilus marshmallow you can see that it had grown reasonably well, but the foliage had terrible red spider mite damage. This one had grown reasonably well, the foliage isn't too bad, and this one was rather weak. You can see it's got very little root growth. And so I put them in a plastic pot that I cut down so that it was shallow, and planted them in pure sphagnum moss. And when I'd finished, I gave it a fairly good soaking, let it drain, and popped it in this little terrarium that I bought. Right, well, as you could see from the little clips that I did earlier last year, these are now, you can see there's a nice root coming out of here, and from growing them just in sphagnum moss, and they're sitting in a tray which I just occasionally put a little bit of water in with some weak feed, and I've literally, because this is normally kept shut up, they lose very little moisture, and I've actually only needed to water them a very few times because they have such a low transpiration rate. You can see the moss is really quite healthy, and this is just pure sphagnum moss. Now, I haven't had this out of the pot. I don't know if they will carefully come out. Let's just have a look. Oh, there we are. Just put that. And you can see from this that they're really quite happy. Let's just see if I can carefully put this back. One thing I would say is that by far the most vigorous is this variety, and although it's tempting to plant several varieties in a bottle garden or terrarium at the same time. I wouldn't do that again. I would try to keep them separate and, if necessary, have a bigger terrarium so that they can be in separate pots and the different growth rates can be accommodated more easily, because this one is clearly being overtaken not so much by this one, but this much more vigorous one. You can see this is also producing a flower. Now, the flowers of dual orchids are not, in my opinion, the most beautiful. It's not what you would grow dual orchids for. It's really just foliage. So what I'll probably do is just snip this off, because I don't really want it particularly to flower. So in a bit later in the year, I think I'm going to take this out, depot them and pot them up separately, particularly this one that obviously needs perhaps a little bit more feeding. Maybe it's just that it's a much weaker growing variety. They do seem to vary hugely. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you that because I remember I'd watched a lot of videos of people potting them up in a terrarium or some sort of glass container, and there was never seemed to be a follow-up as to how well they were doing after 6 months or a year. So rather than repeating that sort of video, I thought it would be better to pot them up a while ago and then see how well they were doing. So you can actually see that for most people, this, I would say, is the best starting point, because they get the even very high humidity that they need. Depending upon where you put them, they get enough light, and you haven't got to worry about them drying out at all. And it has also meant that because they never get sprayed, unlike my other orchids, they never get water on the leaves, and it keeps the leaves almost pristine. Although, having said that, because it is winter and at 17 centigrade, it's really not quite warm enough. They've hardly grown for the last November, December, January, 3 months or so, while the temperature's been too cool. But if you had them indoors in a more of a living room environment, I think they would continue growing happily right through the winter. Right, well, I hope that if anyone is thinking of growing dual orchids, I hope that will give you a fairly reliable starting point if you want to grow them, because they are extremely beautiful. Right, thanks for watching, and hope to see you in another video.